we should be muted.
Yeah, we're live.
David, hello. Hey.
Hello, Ulrike.
Hello. Good to see you. Good to hear you. It's fine.
I think the video works, so that's good.
The video works.
And yeah.
You see the logo in the back from me with MEP.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you. Good to hear you. It's fine.
The video works, so that's good.
The video works.
Hello, Miss Müller.
Yeah.
It's Anka here
You
from
see
what?
the logo in the back from me with MEP.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, it's Anka here from Water Europe. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Mrs. Müller, you have the image behind you, so the background, you have it reversed. I don't know how to explain it. From the left to right, and we see it wrong. Okay, I don't know why. I think that your image is mirrored or something, the settings. It is good if it appeared like this to you only before you logged in. You don't need to reverse it. I don't know how to explain to change this rule if possible. I don't hear you anymore. You are muted.
Maybe my assistant should try it.
Yeah, it's actually very simple. In the Zoom configuration for the background, you can click on mirror my video, and probably that has been clicked on.
Yes.
Okay, muss mal gucken. Hintergrund plus.
Yeah.
This. It's moment. I think it's wrong. No, it's wrong. I ask my assistant. I try once more.
Okay. Anyway, we are already online, so everybody hears us, just so you're aware.
Sorry. Is it now right? Can you see me? Hear me?
Yes, it's perfect. Now we can see both of you. Perfect.
Okay, so we
Thank
changed
you.
the seat. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Danke. Dann machen wir die Earplugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Good.
that was like climbing a hill,
Okay.
but we made it.
Yeah. Very good, Penny. I propose that we wait another 2 minutes, as I see still people entering, and then
Yes, of
we'll
course.
kick off.
Ja, og så bare på et tidspunkt, så kommer du ind, når du hører sige noget.
Okay, I think we've passed the Zoom equivalent of the academic quarter, so I propose we're going to start. Welcome everybody to this online meeting of the MEP Water Group on the perspectives and agenda for the water sector in the coming years. My name is Dirk Krol, and I'm the Executive Director of Water Europe, the management body of the MEP Water Group. We have some great speakers lined up for you today, including, of course, EU Commissioner Sinkevicius, and we will also be joined by 400 registered participants over Zoom, but also we will live stream this event over LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Without much further ado, it's my great pleasure to announce Ms. Penia Wijs, MEP, and the chairwoman of the MEP Water Group, who will guide you through the rest of the session today. Penia, please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Dirk, and welcome everybody to this very important afternoon in the history of MEP Water, but also in the community of researchers, scientists, and not at least all the enterprises, big and large, who is engaged in the water agenda somewhere along the very, very long line. I am so happy to see you all, and I'm also very happy to announce to you the little group of colleagues from other political groups that together with me is now the new group, a new generation, hopefully, of how to work with the water agenda in a way that lifts it up to the potential that water actually has. to the climate change, to the environment, to our health, but also hopefully for the trade opportunities, the export opportunities of European enterprises who really work with new innovative ideas that we use in the Union to make us be a bulletproof role model for the rest of the world. And that is why I'm happy to have with me today Ulrike Müller from Renew Europe. I reached out to her because she's a very strong politician into farming. And that is why it's so important to have her on board to link the farm to fork strategy and all the farmers' perspectives into the water agenda. And she will have the floor in 2 seconds time. I will also mention to you that Bernd Lange, for those of you who has been in the water agenda for many years, you will know that he's actually one of the founding fathers of the Water Framework Directive. And now he's the chair of the Trade Committee in the European Parliament. And he is now re-entering full force also in the water agenda to see the aspects of export potentials and how we can lift them. And then as the last one that I would like to mention from my colleagues in the parliament is Vondra from ECR. I met Alexandra Vondra in the beginning of my term. This is my first term as a parliamentarian. In the first part of legislation that I was doing, namely how to treat wastewater in a healthy way to reuse it in farming. I have a hello from both Bernd Lange and Alexander Vondra, who couldn't make it today, but we have with us Ulrike Müller. And please, Ulrike, the floor is yours for a short introductory. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pernille. Thank you, experts. Thank you, participants, Commissioner. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm happy to join the water group as I know that water plays a central role in so many different areas, but there is a need for more dialogue. I have been working on Agri and Envy Committee since 2014. It's my second turn in the European Parliament. Next to being a MEP, I'm a dairy farmer and I have been active in regional communal politics for about 30 years, where we also have a communal water provider. So I know firsthand about many key water issues and conflicting interests. And I know how important dialogue between different stakeholders is. We have made good experience with water dialogues between farmers and water providers in Germany, for instance. During the last mandate and the first half year of this mandate, I worked on as ALDE or Renew Shadow Rapporteur on the Drinking Water Directive, which of course is the key legislation for the water sector. I believe this group is a valuable platform to look into the interfaces between the protection of our water resources and the legitimate interests of different users. Thanks again for the invitation to join the group. And now I'm looking forward for the Commissioner and the experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ulrike. Are we still running? I see Ulrike, and that is wonderful, but I hope that you can all hear that we are now actually welcoming the Commissioners Sinkevičius, and I am, together with Ulrike, very, very happy that you can make it to participate in this afternoon, and we look forward to hear what you have to say to us, also to make room for a few questions from the audience before you have to leave this webinar. And still, I am looking at Ulrike, and I like to look at Ulrike, but now I would like to see Sinkevičius, please.
Thank you very much.
There you are.
Yes, I'm here. I've been here since the beginning, and it's great to be here. And thank you very much for the invitation, dear Pernille, dear members of the MEP Water Group. Ladies and gentlemen, Good afternoon to everybody who is connected to this online event via Zoom, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Thank you for your kind and timely invitation to meet for the first time with the group. This group and the European Parliament as a whole has been a strong supporter of an ambitious, forward-looking EU water policy. So it's really a great pleasure for me to take forward this well-established cooperation between the Commission and the MEP Water Group. I say our meeting is timely because 2021 is a very important year for water. A year when we go from words to action. And we have now evaluated a large part of our water legislation. We have revised together one part the Drinking Water Directive and have begun to review other key elements of our water acquis. Looking back, we have every reason to be proud of our common achievements. When we assess the impact of EU water policy, we realize it has made a tremendous contribution. Most EU lakes and rivers are no longer the rubbish tips they were in the past. Most of our bathing waters, so important for tourism, but also for people's general well-being, are now safe. And almost all EU citizens have access to water that is clean and affordable. Most EU citizens and businesses are now connected to waste water treatment sites. And while our continent is densely populated, more and more of our rivers are truly living. Last but not least, the fundamental ideas of our water legislation are widely accepted. Water has a value and those who pollute it should pay. But things are not perfect. As we are the first to admit, far too many nutrients still flow into our rivers and seas. Vast numbers of obstacles block the path for migrating fish and prevent the natural flow of sediments. There are still cases where wastewater spill directly into surface waters. As a result, despite the obligations of the Water Framework Directive, only less than half of our water bodies are in good status. And there are less than 6 years remaining for member states to fix these problems before the deadline in 2027. And there are fresh challenges too, not just micropollutants such as microplastics and pharmaceuticals, but also climate change, which will bring longer periods of drought and more frequent episodes of extreme rainfall. And looking into the future, there is an urgent need to accelerate the implementation of the existing water acts. A degree of fine-tuning is also required as we embrace the European Green Deal. And it's time to deliver on policy integration. And for this, I need your active support. In shaping the water policy of tomorrow, it will not be enough to focus on water legislation alone. Reaching our target will also depend on several other initiatives that will pass through the Council and Parliament. Levels of access nutrients and pesticides will depend on the ambition of the Common Agricultural Policy and of the policies and initiatives resulting from our Farm to Fork strategy. The ambition of our chemical strategy and its legislative components will have a major influence on the chemicals that end up in water. The protection of aquatic ecosystems will depend on the forthcoming legislation on binding restoration targets for nature, which we plan to adopt later this year, over and above the Water Framework Directive. Similarly, the strength of the criteria under the taxonomy legislation and the focus of investments through the Recovery and Resilience Facility will decide how fast we address the problem of insufficient water treatment and how truly we address the problem of obsolete or outdated obstacles in rivers. Just today, the college adopted a new EU strategy on climate adaptation, which looks at the measures to deal with both too much and too little water, as water managers across the EU are increasingly obliged to deal with flood management and with water scarcity in parallel. The strategy proposes notably to encourage the use of nature-based solutions to improve water regulation and management, but also to address water efficiency and reuse in many sectors of the economy. Later this spring, the Zero Pollution Action Plan will present our approach to reduce pollution, including in water, in a comprehensive manner and it will announce further actions to accelerate the implementation of the Water Framework Directive. Dear colleagues, let me now briefly touch regarding the Water Framework Directive. And following our comprehensive fitness check finalized in December 2019, we concluded that if it is broadly fit for purpose and that we therefore see no need for its general revision, this is also what I confirmed in December last year in the plenary debate of the European Parliament on the EU water legislation. But I also said that we need to redouble efforts at national and EU level to ensure proper implementation to stimulate and increase investments to better integrate water into other policies to address chemical pollution and to achieve administrative simplification and boost digitalization. To achieve this, the Commission will continue to support Member States with the implementation of the Water Framework Directive, for instance, by promoting cost recovery and the incorporation of externalities by providing financial support for research and innovation through Horizon Europe and for investment through the regional instruments, the Common Agricultural Policy and the LIFE program. In addition, the Resilience and Recovery Facility will provide significant additional resources to those Member States who will prioritize expenditures related to the Water Framework Directive. And we are currently also working on an update of the lists of substances to be minimized or completely phased out in surface and groundwaters. This will include PFAS, for example, and a number of pharmaceuticals. My aim is to table a proposal for your consideration in 2022. In parallel, the work on revising the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive has also started, taking into account the feedback from Member States, stakeholders, and of course, also the recent EP water resolution. We plan to come forward with our proposal for modernization early next year. The revision should address a number of central points. It should include the persisting pollution due to storm water overflows in a context of extreme weather events, aggravatably the climate crisis. It should cover how to enhance the level of human health and nature protection in the many towns and villages which currently fall outside the scope of the directive. It will also look at ways to avoid the excessive amount of polluting releases from individual wastewater systems and nutrient overloads. And last but not least, it will also address micropollutants and pharmaceuticals to secure a fairer burden sharing of the costs, such as revision entails. We are exploring, of course, different avenues, in particular extended producer responsibility to involve the initial polluter in shouldering the costs in line with the polluter pays principle. And finally, looking back, we are also very proud that we revised, the revised drinking water directive entered into force on 12th of January this year. This was a major milestone. Safe drinking water is essential for citizens' well-being, and I'm glad that the new directive also addresses water scarcity. Thanks to its provision aimed at reducing water leakages, it also entails the first EU-wide capping on PFAS and the new water reuse regulation, for which you, Pernil, were one of the shadow rapporteurs under the new European Parliament legislative term, will become applicable as of June 2023. And preparations for this implementation are ongoing, and the potential for a more circular use of water and better water efficiency is also being examined in the context of the ongoing review of the Industrial Emissions Directive. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, these are only some of the key examples illustrating the focus of our current work in relation to EU water policy, but I hope they give you a sense of where we are heading. As I said, that direction of travel will also depend on the efforts and the work of the European Parliament. Your influence as members of the European Parliament will be decisive, not only to ensure ambition, but also coherence across policies. So I very much hope that you will keep water in mind when debating and deciding within your political groups and your different committees on that wide range of policies that will directly impact water quality and quantity. And I hope I can count on your active engagement. We have an unprecedented opportunity before us. And I look very much forward to working closely with all of you in the course of the next 4 years of this Commission's mandate. Let me stop here and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. And I will not leave you in any doubt that we will stand by you and your ambitions. And that is also why I would actually like to ask you the first question of the Q&A session regarding something, and I know that your time was limited, that you did not address. So that is why I would like to ask you the Resilience and Recovery Fund and the national action plans. I'm very curious to see, and I hope you share that curiosity to see what does the national states suggest to combine the digital transition and the earmarked digital fundings to the climate funding projects. How do you see, and what do you hope to see coming from the national states of ideas of how to use the digital transformation of EU in a way that it also helps us to reach all our ambitions and goals on the water agenda? Because what I've learned so far is that water is everywhere and nowhere in the discourse, because everybody is talking about other issues related to the climate. So we have to really push for a re-narrativing of the water, that it's not only about health, it's also about climate. So could we maybe nurture the lingo in the member states and the awareness of how to use the digital and the green fundings to water-related projects and initiatives? I would like to hear you on that one. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, you know, now when countries finally starting to submit their plans, of course, we're looking at them carefully, and I'm reaching out personally to the ministers, and of course referring and trying to point out of what maybe been missed in the plan, what should be, of course, noted, and of course, wastewater treatment. Water treatment is one of those key topics which usually is discussed with certain member states, because I see recovery and resilience plan as a unique opportunity actually to step up those efforts in increasing capacities which haven't been done before. Now, speaking on the potential of digital sector to contribute to water sector, yes, the water sector, of course, has a very large carbon footprint, in particular for wastewater treatment, but also for transport and pumping and etc. And the water sector has a number of significant inefficiencies, which are very significant as well, of course, in Europe, or mismanagement of wastewater supply and wastewater treatment capacity. The digital sector can heavily, significantly contribute by finding technological solutions for this problem, identifying, for example, leaks, managing supply and demand in the wastewater sectors, and etc. Of course, it should be noted that the digital sector itself is a huge water user, especially for cooling of data centers. So also the sector itself could contribute significantly to reduce its carbon footprint through sustainable water use. And I'm working closely with my colleagues, Vestager and Breton, but also Maria Gabriel, to ensure synergies and consistency here, because it's very important to keep this high on the agenda. Probably I'll stop here with.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, together with Breton and Vestager, you are in a champion-like company. I have question from the audience. I don't know actually who made it. I got it on WhatsApp from my assistant just next to me. The question is, will energy and climate neutrality not be considered as a part of the wastewater directive revision? It's a great question. And I'm certain that you can come up with a great answer to that one. Thank you.
Could you repeat?
Of course, yes.
I'm very sorry, the second part of the question. But
Yeah.
if you would repeat the question itself, because
I will, of course. It says, will energy and climate neutrality not be considered as a part of the wastewater directive revision?
Okay. Speaking about the waste water framework and revision, of course, it definitely has to take into account major challenges. It has to be agile, and it has to address the current issues. Now the question is, in what capacity it should be done? Can it take into account all of it? I'm not definitely sure. We will definitely see after the consultation. But definitely this part is going to be part of the impact assessment.
Okay, thank you. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Thank you so much. It's from Cyril May, something with a T. I don't see it all, but the question comes here. What will the European Commission do to further encourage circular water management practices in order to preserve freshwater resources in Europe? Okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, one is the key that of course that the fresh water, the clean water would be accessible to the citizens, and that's definitely embedded in our key principles. Now, what we doing already probably, and what we're going to do in order to ensure clean drinking water to citizens, I would start with first that by saying, of course, that the Commission will step up the implementation of the directives, of course, working with the member states, because we already see that our ACIS is actually working, and if it's sufficiently implemented across this member state, that's already a major improvement. Secondly, probably speaking about the member states, we definitely recognize that there is still many gaps of implementation, and clearly also a number of cases where member states are in breach of the law. So of course this also has to be stepped in, but I think what's also important, that there should be a financial support of water legislation, and of course ideally ring-fenced budget. Clearly, there are those investment needs in water sector, and our starting point is that the polluter should pay for water pollution, and national budget should be up to the challenge, and EU funding has always played a part, whether it's in research, life, of course, agriculture, or regional funding. It's been crucial to rolling out increased wastewater treatment capacity throughout the EU.
Thank you so much also for this answer. Now I know that my colleague Ulrike Müller also has a very relevant question, so I think I will ask the cameraman to shift over for her to say it herself, also because she has this fancy wall actually being the logo of MEP Water. I only have myself ocean swimming back home in Copenhagen, so Ulrike, the floor is yours for your question.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have one question about the timetable from the Urban Wastewater Directive. Can you tell us more a little bit about this? When we can expect this? That's only a short question.
Thank you so much.
So, you know, about the urban wastewater treatment directive. So the timeline of the revision is the July, 2020 was the publication of inception and so on, and probably the upcoming what's important. So Q1 we're going to have open public consultation. In March, June in 2021, expert workshops on selected topics such as sludge management, circular economy, energy aspects, reporting, and so on. Then in the second half of the year, around September this year, we plan to have a stakeholder conference on preliminary finding, and then next year in first quarter publication of proposal and impact assessment.
Perfect. Complex question, simple answer. We like that. Let's co-create in the future with you, Sinkevičius, and thank you so much for coming. I would like to give you just the floor for a closing remark from your side, and then we will all wish you a wonderful afternoon and see you soon again.
Thank you very much once again for the invitation and of course your support. Of course, I try to put everything as much as it's possible to be clear with where we're heading in my introductory speech. Of course, I'm always looking not only for your support, but also for your position as a members of the parliament, as this group on a commission work, so in your active involvement. And of course, I'm looking forward to engage with you in the future more.
Well, in the spirit of that good note, we will continue and then, of course, also send you away with a big smile. We could clap, but it will make a mess of a noise in this digital world. So stay healthy and happy.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So now the next speaker, I'm very happy to announce that David Martin from Ecolab will now be giving us a tour to some of the newest informations coming from Ecolab. I'm very happy that you could make it, and I will just give you the floor also to introduce yourself a little bit more to the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pernille and Ulrike, and thank you so much for the energy you're putting into this. So I'm very happy to join you today. And my name is David Martin. I am the Vice President of Public Affairs for Ecolab in Europe, and I am leading as well our business in beautiful France and Belgium. So maybe just a couple of minutes to position Ecolab here. So at Ecolab, we are focused on making the world cleaner, safer, and healthier. We partner with customers around the world, so in about 40 different types of industries, from mining, from food processing facilities, pharma plants, to hospitals, hotels, and restaurants. And there we help them to operate more efficiently by optimizing their water and energy use, by keeping food safe, and as well keeping the environment clean. And one of the main pillars in there is what we call infection prevention. So we feel very proud and I think a huge sense of responsibility as we help during this pandemic period, hospitals and vaccination centers to stay safe. So how we help our customers is to do more with less, growing their business responsibly, and clearly sustainability and innovation are at the core to making that a reality. So after this little intro, I wanted to try and set the context from a water perspective. So water is essential to economy, essential to the society. Many of us basically will describe it as being water is life. At the same time, water is a finite resource that we absolutely need to cherish. And let me maybe spend a few seconds to give you a couple of elements that demonstrate how important it is to cherish it. The use of water has doubled since 1960s, and there is no new water. All the water we have is here and now. According to the World Economic Forum, the gap between the demand and the availability of water is about 40% by 2030. In many places already, the demand is exceeding the sustainable supply, and in other places, water scarcity is already having quite an impact on the economic growth. We talk about water scarcity. We can talk as well about water stress. So water stress is the balance between the demand and the availability. And actually, the World Resource Institute has about a month ago reassessed that gap that I was referring to. And actually, the gap is not 40, but now 56% between the demand and the availability. So the urgency clearly is here. Another study from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology gives another aspect or another view of that, projecting that by 2050, half of the world's population will be in a water-stressed location. Additionally, the United Nations report of 2017 indicated that 80% of the world's wastewater is discharged into the environment, but not treated. And as indicated by the Eurobarometer survey, 47% of European citizens are worried about water pollution. So in the last point I wanted to make in terms of context is that, one tends to think that water stress is really an issue in the hot places, Africa, or Mediterranean countries like Spain, Italy, and Greece. Well, actually, what we see here in Europe, it's not the case. It applies to all the countries. For instance, Belgium, where I think quite of our friends who are dialing in are based, is actually one of the European countries with most at risk of water shortage, as demonstrated by the World Resource Institute. The other element as well, we can talk about the land of 1,000 lakes, beautiful Finland, where a couple of years ago, due to drought, there was a lack of water availability and many paper mills had to reduce their throughput. So even in Finland, water is a resource as well that needs to be preserved. So having set the context, there is some good news after all this. I've got basically three good newses I'd like to share with you. And I think just after listening to the Commissioner, I would call it the EU momentum with the Green Deal, where clearly the European Commission is demonstrating a very, very strong ambition to increase levels of health and environmental protection for the citizens. And so with this ambition, let's not miss this unique opportunity and build on this momentum to address the water preservation. Indeed, the announced zero pollution ambition will be critical, as again mentioned a few minutes ago, to reduce harmful pollution and better protect freshwater resources. Similarly, the upcoming revision of the Industrial Emissions Directive should provide incentives to increase water reuse in Europe. And so should the revision of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. So in general terms, the EU law should further encourage circular water management practices for the reuse of treated water, and that is for agriculture, farming, industry, and as well municipalities. So that's, let's say, the first good news. The second one is that water has a gift, and water can greatly contribute to the main target of the Green Deal, which is carbon neutrality by 2050. And that is its link with energy, that strong intertwined link between water and energy that many refer to as being the water-energy nexus. As an example, 40% of electricity bills of municipalities in Europe goes to pumping, moving, and treating water. So the obvious case of, by preserving and reducing the water we're using, we will reduce the energy needed to pump, move, and treat, which will have a significant contribution to this ambition of carbon neutrality by 2050. Additionally, and I think this is as well one of the questions, Pernille, you were asking, is that revising the water legislation, absolutely important, but it is as well an opportunity to revise the energy legislation as well. And in particular, the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Energy Performance on Buildings Directive that should contain water efficiency considerations. And the last good news, I hope, is that here industry is, can, and wants to be an ally. The EU institutions can count on the industry to support the Green Deal when it comes to smart water management. Many industry players are already implementing actions to reduce their water footprint, and they are reducing their water footprint because they need to do that as they are seeing the situation with regards to, or the gap growing between demand and supply. For instance, just to give a couple of examples, car producers producing better cars with less water. We're talking about data centers and the high-tech industry becoming more and more energy efficient and water efficient. Maybe another example, again, referring to Belgium, beer is obviously, let's say, something that people associate to Belgium, and the beer industry reducing the usage of water by half to produce beer. So clearly the industry is engaged in this, and as an instant, in 2019, Ecolab has helped to save the equivalent of 780 million cubic meters of water in the industry, which is equivalent to the total drinking need of the European continent. So reducing, recycling, and reusing water for our customers is something which is at the heart of the industry. And therefore, I think the Commission has here strong industrial allies that are fully committed to advance the legislation towards sustainability. Looking forward to working together, naturally, with the Commission, with the super MEP water group, in order to turn Europe into a water smart society. And perhaps just to finish my comment here, you know, it is definitely time to become smarter in the way we manage water, because what's good for water is good for the planet, good for the people, good for the business. Water is everybody's business. Thank you. I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much.
That's the most common word or phrase we do right now, huh?
Yeah, that's a wonderful energy in this water right now. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I look forward to harvest all the many questions that are actually floating in. I see behind my screen. Just a note to all who wants to send a question and have it put into this session to David or to Peter Steen in a short while. If you don't succeed in having the question used in this session, please don't hesitate and just send us the question again. We will we will keep them all, and also to see what is actually the landscape of possible new webinars or inquiries to be done. So thank you just for that, the energy and attitude, David. And now, being a Dane, I admit that I am very proud to announce the next speaker, Peter Steen Mikkelsen, professor from the world's best university, almost technical university. I think that DTU is on level 6 or 7 globally. And that, of course, makes me very proud. Also, because I have to admit what I haven't told Loic and Dirk yet, but I have actually a daughter-in-law who is a student of Peter Steen back home in Denmark. So now I have the opportunity to actually learn a little bit about what she learns from listening to you, Peter. The floor is yours for the next 15 minutes or so. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Pernille. Can you hear me and see me? Yes,
we can.
I actually did know about your daughter-in-law, so I'm not that surprised.
Wow!
Thanks very much for that very kind introduction, and I'm very proud to be here and glad to be able to have the opportunity to speak to you and the other participants. I am a professor of urban water systems at the Technical University of Denmark, and I just want to start a little bit with explaining where I come from so that you better understand the perspective I'm going to bring. That means I'm a civil engineer and environmental engineer by training. I specialize in stormwater management, which is a lot about hydraulics and hydrology, a lot of environmental chemistry, dynamic modeling, data analysis, and a little bit of social technical sciences to better understand about uncertainty and human and organizational behavior in relation to water and innovation. This is where my career has driven me in that direction, which is why it's so interesting for me to be here today. Stormwater, well, it's derived from rain, right? And there's a quality to that when it comes to life, to art, to human culture. But stormwater also pollutes the environment. It does so when it's mixed with wastewater and overflows directly into the environment. There are a lot of microbial contaminants in stormwater, sometimes from the wastewater or from animals or elsewhere in the environment. There are many chemicals in stormwater coming screened off from the air, from the built environment. And nowadays, of course, with all the talk about microplastics, yes, a lot of the microplastics come into the environment because it's accumulated and carried by the stormwater. Yet, stormwater is not mentioned with a single word in the Water Framework Directive, which I think is interesting when looking ahead. Stormwater is also connected to very many of the things that I heard the Commissioner speak about in terms of what is on the agenda for Europe in the future. Because stormwater is connected to climate change. When we have global warming and climatic changes, we have learned over the past 10 years, we have seen it and learned it via science, that we will have more frequent large rainstorms that contribute to all these overflows and stormwater discharges and to the cloudbursts that flood our cities. Yet none of this was actually thought of back in 2020 when the Water Framework Directive that we still work with was crystallized, which is, I think, relevant to reflect on. Over the past few years, I've been part of some initiatives in Denmark. So I would like to bring to you the catchphrase "Water for Smart, Livable Cities." This is the catchphrase we developed in the context of planning the World Water Congress and Exhibition in Copenhagen that was supposed to take place in October last year, but obviously due to the pandemic now has been moved to September 22. So I'm hoping that many of us will gather there to discuss these items even more. There's a publication out from State of Green describing some of our thoughts behind that catchphrase, water, not as only a problem, but for seeing water as an enabler of creating smart and livable cities. Another thing that has formed parts of my life in recent years is that a few years ago, 2 years ago, we published what we call at the university a sector development report on water. And that's something we do as a strategic initiative from time to time, working together with a selected industry, interviewing important stakeholders, running workshops and so on, looking also internationally, try to, you could say, take the temperature on a sector. What does the sector believe that it needs and wants for the future? And then we, as a university, of course, use that knowledge to try to rethink ways of how we are educating and doing research and so on in collaboration with our stakeholders. And we published that 2 years ago in Parliament, Danish Parliament. We launched it, and the title of that report came out to be "Let Water and Data Flow." That was not our agenda when we started, but via all the interviews in the water industry, it just became clearer and clearer that the water industry has developed so much since the first environmental regulation emerged in the 1970s. It's so complex, so filtered together, so fragmented, the whole water sector, that new thinking is needed. We need like a system shift in how we think and work and innovate and earn money in the water sector. And this is where, and make the sector, of course, more sustainable. And this is where digitalization comes in, really, as the single enabler that people can cooperate on in order to achieve the goals for the future. And digitalization is here not the goal, it's the means. It's what we can work together on in order to try to find new ways to get where we want. And of course, where do we want? Well, we want to go in the direction of the 2030 goals in terms of energy efficiency, CO2 emissions, biodiversity, and all the other important political agenda that are up at the moment. Through all these interviews, we looked a little bit in history and looked at how environmental and water regulation has unfolded over the years. And I think in Denmark was, if not the first, then one of the very first countries to install a modern environmental regulation in the water field, and that was in 1973. In 2000, the Water Framework Directive came around, and I was, as many others in my generation, very inspired because this was seen as the big integrator. And I think it has worked as the big integrator, and of course, also when considering all the daughter directives that have been integrated and merged over the years. But I also think that right now is time to rethink. Some things can be implemented better, I agree. But also some things were not even thought about when formulating the Water Framework Directive back in 2000, like climate change, like circular economy, like digitalization as a way. I mean, sometimes when I talk to regulators about the fragmentation of the regulation of the water sector at large, I'm asking, why is this so? And they say, well, if you cannot measure it, how can you regulate it? And right now, even though we speak as scientists about the water cycle as something we think we know, well, we know the processes, but we cannot, there's so many things we cannot quantify today. And when we cannot quantify, how do you then make an efficient regulation? That's a good question. So this is where also digitalization comes in potentially to find ways to quantify better what goes on in the water sector with regard to the flow of water, contaminants, energy, and how water can contribute to business and so on. When we look ahead, 2030 to some may look as being very far away. I think it's really close. It's only 10 years or even less. And we need to hurry up to get anywhere in the direction of the 2030 goals, especially in the water sector, where things the value is really created through very large infrastructures that take years to design and that last very long. So the changes are not very easy to implement. I will just touch upon a few thematic areas. Water and energy, of course, this is a big thing. And just one perspective on that, wastewater treatment is often seen as a big energy consumer, and it is a big energy consumer when you look worldwide. And if you implement the current mainstream wastewater treatment systems around the world, also in the 70 or 80% for the 70 or 80% of the world population that currently doesn't have wastewater treatment, then of course we will lead to increased energy uses. But if you look at modern technology, for example, in Denmark, we have wastewater treatment plants that are now energy producers, not energy consumers. But via ways of reorganizing the process technology inside the treatment plants, we're actually able now to produce energy at the treatment plants. We're also starting to consider how a treatment plant can be operated in connection with other sustainable energy sources like wind and solar. These are temporarily varying, and we're looking into can we find ways to operate the wastewater treatment plants so that they can use sustainable energy when available and produce sustainable energy when the other energy forms are not available due to the weather. In that way, we can fundamentally change the way wastewater treatment is perceived, and maybe create technology that can help the rest of the world without carrying an extra environmental burden like the energy uses and other mistakes. Of course, then comes also the harvesting of the water as a resource, which is very important, the reuse perspective of the water, and all the materials inside the wastewater, like the nutrients, the organic matter, and many other substances that may be useful to harvest. A perspective of water and health. Sanitation is, of course, a big success. Keeping clean and dirty water separate is maybe the single most important contributor to human health and prosperity. So it's important to keep these things, the clean and the dirty water, apart. Nowadays, there are two things that are coming into the water and health discussion. For example, the whole issue of antimicrobial resistance spread via wastewater. This is a major concern, and I'm really glad to see that there are now initiatives also in the context of Water Europe to discuss that topic more and create more insight in it. Another one is the whole COVID-19 testing thing. I live in a country where we test humans a lot for COVID, and we have had some success with this, but it's extremely expensive. And I think there are some real potentials, and it's already beginning around the world to test not the humans, but the wastewater. And I'm thinking here not only of testing the wastewater at the entry point to the treatment plant, but doing it at various locations throughout a sewer system, and applying different mathematical methods to try to find out where's the source, where's the breakout right now. I think we're looking into a potential where we can, say, revitalize the value of wastewater infrastructure, creating value for society that makes it possible to do things in terms of human health that you cannot even imagine at the moment. But that requires that health authorities and environmental authorities and the authorities responsible for efficiency of infrastructure, that they start speaking together, which is not always the case. Water and chemicals is, of course, a big issue. I don't think I will go into that in respect of time, but I will speak a little bit about water and climate. When you look into the water framework directives and most of the other directives, at least those that I've studied, those that come in the context of environmental protection, climate change is not really spoken of. Yes, we do have the flood directive, but it's not really fully implemented in a way where it's aligned with what goes on in the implementation of the water framework directive. Stormwater, which is a little bit my professional love life, it's not there. It's simply not there. And also the whole agenda of nature-based solutions that is now coming up is a lot about stormwater. But we are implementing technology, we are making innovation actions in Europe without really also acknowledging that there's a need for providing more insight to provide measurements of what goes on, how these systems they evolve over time, how long they last, and so on. There are huge knowledge gaps there, where I think Europe can play a role in terms of how the research agenda is driven. The last thing I want to say under the thematic part of my talk here is, of course, on water and circularity, which is a big thing, and it comes also with the wastewater treatment discussion that I talked about just a while ago. But I would like to just come with one example that says something about how I think we need to think of the sector and think of more in integration and utilization of information. Smart meters is being discussed a lot, and that is a way to monitor water consumption, sometimes even at the household level, and send data about this so that it can be interpreted and used, for example, for billing purposes and for making analytics so that we can understand how the leakage occurs in the water networks and so on. And that's, of course, very useful. At the same time, we have so little understanding of the wastewater flows and the say illicit connections and the flow in the sewer systems. Now, I think that maybe the biggest potential of smart meters in the future will not be for water metering, but as an indirect measurement of the wastewater that should be in the sewers. If we can use smart meters for that purpose, we have the solution to finding out about all the sources in the sewers that shouldn't be there, and that at the moment is the cause that we cannot really regulate the whole urban water sector efficiently because we cannot quantify the flows. About 10-15 years ago, it was very popular to write about the complexity of water in applications and articles and so on, and because that was considered a new thing, complexity. And I think that's a little bit gone out of fashion because we know that the water field and the water sector is complex. Maybe we should start thinking about simplexity, how we can find new narratives to explain the complexity of water. As Pernille said in the beginning, water is everywhere and nowhere. I would like to add that stormwater and climate change adaptation is everywhere and nowhere in the regulations. And we need to start putting words on reality here to be able to qualify the discussion. I think the changes coming up over the next 10 years until 2030, they will be fundamental. Yet it has to go very fast. And from a water sector perspective, 10 years is a very short time. There's a lot of technology development for treatment, for monitoring, for source control of contaminants, for environmental protection, rethinking of regulations, and also ways that universities can better contribute to the overall research and innovation ecosystem. There's a lot of that to be developed. And I think the students that we enroll tomorrow, they will be the ones solving problems in 2030. But the innovation ecosystem and the research education ecosystem is not in place for this purpose yet. And that is my outgoing comment from my talk here, that we really need, when we look at European research in the water area, we need to consider how this brings us in a situation that we have the right workforce in 2030 also. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter Steen, for your contribution, and also for the trap that I actually stepped into, being this proud mother-in-law and also proud Dane. I incidentally offended another student from a Portuguese university in this audience, and I'm so sorry for that. But that's just how we are, I think, Danes, but also proud Europeans, everybody. And that's actually the catalyst for us all to use, that we like to compete with each other in the EU. We like to compete to be the best, and by creating, hopefully, an environment coming from the MEP Water Group to be the good host and sometimes also facilitator of arguments and discussions and and also fights about what is the best way to solve a problem. That is actually how we can make the European Union as the real strong role model, also the role model of new ideas, of new ways of doing things. So thank you to Casimiro da Silva Santos for pointing my bragging out in the chat and giving me the chance to actually say in my little intervention now what is the intention and the hope and the raison d'etre from my side, and I know also from Ulrike and Bernd Lange and Vondra, that we would like to do, being this this intergroup kind of European Parliament little guerrilla group that would like to have the water agenda to flow and also to float much more in the next coming years of this legislative term. And as I said, in between David and Peter, we also hope, together with a strong team of Dirk and Loïc, that we can use this new virtual reality that COVID has given us. Thank you. But no thank you sometimes. We can have many more webinars in the future where we dig down into the different agendas and topics and specialities that I think you, Peter, made a very good overflying about, from climate to circularity to health, to wastewater, and especially also to the energy efficiency agenda. There are so much to do, and I would like to create, together with Dirk and Loïc and my colleagues from the European Parliament, that you participants today, and also our colleagues in the rest of the EU institutions, they acknowledge the value that water can bring, but also to acknowledge the value that water is, and that we, in the terms of the generation contract, we take care of water in a better way to enable us to give the next generation something better than we actually had from our previous generations. I made, or my office made, a couple of months ago, while we had a debate in the European Parliament in a plenary session about the water agenda. I wanted to raise the awareness about water is not only a matter of environmental issues, but the impact is also profound if we regard water and energy efficiency. And my office, oh, there was a little music there, and my office made a little conservative assessment of, if we in the European Union, in the existing water infrastructure, if we made energy efficiency to a conservative level, knowing the needs for more energy efficiency to be implemented, then actually by only doing that, we could save 20 million tons of CO2. And I mean, when we talk about the renovation wave, and that's also a part of my work in my office, then I never miss the chance also to address that when we talk about energy efficiency in the building stock, there is water in buildings. So we have to include that it's not only a matter of new windows and better rooftops, it's also about the supply of water going in and water going out. Together with the smart meter possibilities, and also the link between the digital transformation of the EU with the resilience and recovery funding, I think there is a possibility to create almost kind of a novel or an anthology of the water, and create new and rememberable narratives of water. And hopefully it will be in a way so that for our citizens, for our voters, for our colleagues out there, that we do what we do to help them and make the world better, that they also can memorize these narratives and acknowledge and also to prioritize their own way of living in the framework of what can they do in an easy way, in an affordable way, to support and secure healthy water circumstances and quality, but also the link between water and the environmental aspects to the climate change through digital tools and smart solutions. I really hope that we can make this big wave to build up both internally in the political context, but especially also in a way that engages both SMEs, big and large, and also, of course, citizens, students on our universities, children in schools, so that we are raising awareness again and give the water agenda a new renaissance. I hope next time that we meet in this session that we will have with us Bernd Lange and Alexander Vondra also to participate. And what could be very, very interesting was to focus a little bit more about how could we make a common shared vision and common shared also toolbox of initiatives going out from Water Europe together with MEP Water, so that we are all proud as Europeans to support our SMEs and enterprises in what they do together with the research environment and the innovation environment to really boost the potential that the Europeans they have, as we are the continent of the many doubters, and by being who we are as Europeans, curious and puzzling with how to understand the world and how to make it better, that we can actually heal the global climate and the global environmental issues and challenges. That is from my side, just to underline not only the energy that I have for this work, but also the hope that all you who participate today and follow both MEP Water and especially also Water Europe in the future, that you remember that we would like to really be both the host, the facilitator, the cross-pollinator, the gardener, the provocateur, the director, whatever it takes from the 10 innovation hats to make us as a group of Europeans proud of what we can do for the water agenda. I really think the water deserves that. From where we came in the history, today we also carry a care to that. So, Dirk, I guess this was what I would like to say for my 10 minutes, and also in respect of the time frame, I think we should just dig into the big ocean of great questions that we can have on board for now. And I will, this is funny to do this in a digital way. I have to look at my WhatsApp to see what question is now going to be the first one. And that one will be to you, Peter. Nature-based solutions can also take care of small agglomeration. Do you know what that is? If they are well managed and avoid greenhouse gas emissions through building sewers. Is there research and innovation progressing on this side? Do you understand the question? If you unmute yourself, Peter.
I think I'm not sure about what was meant about agglomeration, but maybe the question is about nature-based solutions in small agglomerations?
I
Maybe?
think it is a
Could be.
small agglomeration. It's because it's very condensed here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So by that is meant, my interpretation is that we're talking here about nature-based solutions in the context of areas that are not in the centers of cities, where of course nature-based solutions is a big challenge because of lack of space. But if you imagine that there are locations in other, say, suburbs of cities where there's more space available, this is of course where nature-based solutions are easier to implement. I think there's a lot of research in that area. It's something that I've followed and partly worked with for my whole career, and it's a very, very interesting topic because it's as a researcher, because it lies in the interface between many fields, because there are issues about hydrology and hydraulics and meteorology and so on. The whole temperature issue, that nature-based solutions can be used to alleviate temperature fluctuations, avoid heat waves and so on. That's something we know. Maybe we don't know exactly how much value this gives, but there's research in that area worldwide at the moment. There's the whole issue of how vegetation needs to be managed to work properly. There's the whole issue of contamination, which, as I said, with stormwater is a big problem, and there's a lot of work looking into how nature-based solutions can potentially help in that context also. So I'm not saying there's not research, but there's a lot of implementation across Europe and the world, and I mean very much implementation, like there is in the water industry at large. Yet there's hardly any of the investment that really goes into knowledge production or creating the spaces where different disciplines can come together to co-develop the thoughts for the future. And there's almost no monitoring of the implementations that are being done. So we produce a lot of infrastructure, basically from the perspective like we used to do with concrete infrastructure, and we still do for good reasons, but where we are speaking about solutions that are well proven for 100 years, nature-based solutions is something new, and the level of monitoring needed to fully understand and follow these systems in the future, that's not being done, I think, at the moment.
Interesting. Thank you, Peter. David, would you like to add something to this brilliant and puzzling question?
I'm not sure I can really contribute to the comment. Clearly, indeed, nature-based solutions and green solutions, if I may put this in the bucket of that. The industry clearly is aiming and is committing, and I know there's been a commitment of many industries in Europe, which was titled "Water is Everybody's Business," highlighting the appetite we have to use nature-based solutions. I think there's still opportunities to develop further, but clearly this is something that comes into the scope of smart water management. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, David. I have a question that was sent to me from SMS, so it's not from the chat. And we can start with you, David. It can go to both of you. And it's a question about how to reuse water from the industry in the aspect of the zero pollution strategy. Some industry partners, they actually ask for an ambitious goal of 75% of reuse in the industry of water by 2040. I would like to hear your opinions about, is that actually doable? Because if so, I will not be the politician who stands in the way of that. So David, will you start?
I'll try and answer that question, right? So you know, we were talking about the relationship between water and energy, but there's as well some differences. So, and the main difference is that water is a very much a local issue. So, you know, the amount of water available in Paris is not the same as in Frankfurt, as it would be in you know, Barcelona. So the actual stress and the need to reduce water consumption will depend on how much water is available. And when you think water neutrality, in the same way as you think carbon neutrality, water neutrality has to take into account the abstraction of a location. So setting a global target is doesn't make sense. It needs to be specific to the location where you pump the water. And that's basically what we call context-based targeting. And this is where models are put in place and common good tools have been developed with WWF, with the Water Resource Institute, which is accessible to all, to understand the water availability and abstraction, which then allows you to think through, okay, by how much do I need to reduce my water consumption? So that's maybe one element of response to that. Then the second one is, like, can you reuse industrial water? Absolutely. I'll give an example in the dairy industry, where when you're pasteurizing milk, you evaporate water, right? That water is very pure. It may not be potable water because it may not contain calcium, but absolutely can be reused to clean or to go through the process again. And this is where some legislative work has been done in order to better clarify this. Today, for instance, I think it's in Denmark and in Holland, the water, the pasteurized water is reused, not in other member states. So this is where we have to do some clarification and work to make sure that all the member states understand the potential for water reuse. So that is just one example, but there are many, many examples which tend to be industry specific, but as well can illustrate the potential for what in the US, in California, they will call purple piping, which is use of different qualities of water for different uses, and which we call in Europe the gray network. Hence, opportunities of investment to do that. Now, I hope it helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you, David. Peter, over to you. What do you say? Is it possible? 75%, 2030?
I agree with everything that David said, also about the need for considering context, which is also what makes it so difficult to communicate about, right? Because is this a real problem or not a problem, a layperson would say. And our answer would then be, that depends. And that makes it difficult to talk about. I know that in some industries, for example, in the brewing industry, they're now looking into a future. This is my personal interpretation. Maybe I'm over-interpreting here, but that it will be at some point unacceptable to be a large water consumer as an industry. So they need to develop a way to run their business where they use much less water, maybe using only a little more than 1 liter of water when producing 1 liter of beer or something like that. And that's the agenda they're pursuing, because in the long run, they believe this will be what is needed in terms of being considered ethically a good company by the world population. And maybe in some locations that won't really be needed. Elsewhere it will be needed, but it can still be a way as a corporate philosophy to work. We have other parts of the world like Singapore, which have this big ABC water approach, where they try to collect every drop of water from the city, and that applies to the stormwater and the wastewater in a big underground tunnel systems, and then treat it with advanced treatment and then use it. And it's so clean that that's even cleaner than you need for drinking water purposes. So they use it mainly in the industry for special purposes. So yes, it can be done. It's doable if you really want to. And is there a need for more technology development? Definitely. We have some examples here where people are doing, for example, what Singapore is doing. They're not doing it for fun. They're doing it from need and political conflict and so on. Security, basically. They want to be sure that they have the water that they really need. But of course, it can be optimized and done better with new technologies, and considering also the climate change and emissions of CO2 and so on. They will need to face that question also. So yes, it's possible, but is it desirable? Always? That's a good question, and which makes the discussion difficult. And
We like difficult topics and difficult discussions, Peter and David. Thank you so much. The last question is more a question to Ulrike and my colleagues and me, but I will still say it, and then maybe I will ask also from you, David and Peter, to give some advice of how the best political answer could be to this last question of this session. And the question is, what is the position and the follow-up of the water group on the external, outside the EU dimension of right to water? It disappeared from my screen. The right to water petition, notably to ensure that water and sanitation stays on the top agenda of the European Union's cooperation. Just to mention that water has disappeared from the organigram of what is now the ENTPA, which I just learned is the new General Directorate in the Commission on Development, Cooperation, International Partnerships with the Third World. So, as I announced in my beginning, that I would like Europe to be the top provider of water bulletproof technologies. If we shift the focus to the development partnerships with the Third World and Africa, what would you, David and Peter, hope for MEP Water together with Water Europe to do on that also very, very important agenda? Where to start, where to have an end? Thank you.
So maybe I'll try and give one angle to the and it was, I think, a comment I remember receiving. I was with Water Europe maybe a couple of years ago, and you know, we've been for the last few years spending a lot of time amongst water people trying to highlight how much water is important. And it's kind of, if we only try to convince ourselves that water is important, we're probably not going to move the needle enough. And it's exactly stepping out of water, and stepping out of water is engaging with energy, right? Is engaging with digital. What does digital water mean? What does it need? What can it provide? Basically, the whole, you know, let's say the good and the bad of water, it's everywhere. So it is an opportunity because you can basically highlight through other sectors of a society how much water can be a potential. And I think as we think outside of Europe, Africa, clearly the more we find ways to connect water to other aspects than the usual water suspects, the more we'll put it high on the agenda. And I think that's probably, I think, something that maybe even today we're trying to do. So that was my input.
That's a great input. Thank you, David. Peter, do you have something to add on that?
I agree.
It's okay.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
I agree. We need to connect water better to other sectors. I think that applies also to what I said about energy efficiency before very much. I think there's also an issue here. If you read, for example, report from the World Economic Forum about water, they speak of this fragmentation and also of the big risks of water, and they are there, yet nothing much is done. So I'm kind of, this is also a personal reflection. What do we do to make progress here? Yes, we need to connect better, but we also need the knowledge that we sit on in the water sector as a closed, rather small community that has been proven to be very efficient over the past 150 years or so. And maybe changing slowly, but interested in slowly changing or changing faster. We need to figure out how do we make sure that the knowledge we sit on emerge into the other sectors. Because if we don't do that, then big digitalization or pharma thinking will come and disrupt the water sector. And I don't think much good will come out of that. So there's a need also for giving, I would say, the water sector and the educational institutions in the water sector resources to be part of this creating the future process that we're in. And at the moment, I would say we are under pressure in the sector, also in the university sector. We don't have a big water industry that comes along and gives us big money to develop research and education activities like the oil industry has, like the pharma industry has, energy sector and so on. The water is weak there because we are working all for this public good, which has a weak funding base at the moment. So we need to develop new ways to work together to spread the agenda somehow.
That is a very good closing remark from you, Peter, together with, I see that David is nodding his head too. And that is also why let's focus on the national action plans on the Recovery and Resilience Fund to see what goes in the direction of water technologies, because it is needed both in research and in innovation, and also in implementing on the levels of SMEs and society. This will be all for now, and from my side, thank you so much, David and Peter, for your contribution. I hope to see you again at another event, because there are so much more to talk about relating to water. But I will now give the floor back to you, dear Dirk. Thank you so much to you and your team behind this event. It's amazing what you can do with virtual reality, but what you cannot do, and I really tried during the session to make a background like yours. I didn't succeed on that, but it has nothing to do with water, but only with the lack of skills from my side. So thank you so much from my side. Over to you, Dirk, and thank you all participants for your engagement and prioritizing to take part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pernille. Be sure for the next time we will provide you some assistance to make sure you have our beautiful background.
There is water, as you see.
Oh yes, absolutely. So, well, I won't make it. I'll keep it short. First, also from my side, I'd like to thank very much all the speakers for their excellent contribution. I think we had very interesting discussions, and Pernille, particularly also, I want to thank you for your enthusiastic approach in all of this. I'm quite sure that with your support and the other members of the steering board of the MEP Water Group, we will be able to drive forward the agenda of water in the European Parliament for the next few years. My last remark to all of you is that we will reconvene on the 26th of March, where we have our next session, where we have a joint session with the UNESCO World Water Assessment Programme, where they will present their 2021 report on valuing water, which is a title very close to our own Europe Water Vision, which is all about the value of water for a European water smart society. So I really look forward to that. We will be meeting many of you there again. And in the meantime, keep safe and healthy. Bye-bye.